last few weeks how Rishi Sunak has distanced himself, even though, of course, Richard Sharp was his boss in the past when he was a fledgling banker. The That he's really said it's up to the report, and even today he said, "Oh, I haven't read the report, but the resignation's happened." So he's clearly sought to distance himself from what's happened. And indeed, Richard Sharp, I think, this morning did Rishi Sunak a favour by immediately resigning, so
Mm.
he does carry on. In terms of damage to the BBC, one thing I'd say very strongly in the BBC's favour: it's reported the affair very openly, clearly, and properly. So, in terms of editorial, and um, your news colleagues in the BBC and my old colleagues, I lot of time for them as a fellow ex-journalist. I think they've done it properly. I think there has been a damage. Also, we had the Gary Lineker business a few weeks ago. That doesn't help. And I think it does put the onus now on a very clear-cut future appointment process.
Right. Well, you've hit the nail.
But
I was about to
also,
come on to that. I mean, what? So that next appointment of a chairman, should they, in your view, be entirely apolitical? Because the Prime Minister wasn't committing to that today.
no, what they've said today, and what Lucy Fraser, the DCMS secretary, has said, the established appointments procedures, which cover a wide range of things, because under the rules, it's the government's code. It wasn't my code when I was appointment secretary. It's the government's code that for the BBC and for a lot of other very prominent public positions, being a political donor shouldn't be a bar to being appointed, nor, as they say, should it be a qualification, although sometimes that's a bit blurred. Um, so I think it's very much up to the practice. I mean, there are two issues on here. One is how the process is undertaken. There shouldn't be pre-briefing. What happened 2.5 years ago was there was pre-briefing. That initially was Charles Moore's name, then Richard Sharp's name was leaked, as they leaked Paul Dacre's name for Ofcom. And that shouldn't happen. They should allow there to be free and open competition. They should ensure that the appointing panel is properly independent. I mean, actually, the panel did a good job when Sharp was appointed. Merely didn't know the full facts. That was the problem. And I think that's clear cut. I don't see a fundamental change in the system being practical. And indeed, for that
Well,
to happen, you've got to have quite a big debate. I mean, everyone talks about independence, and you could have independent people on the appointing panel, but to take it away from the Prime Minister is a very big step. And
right.
that's
Well,
why,
but short
sorry,
of that, should the rules be tightened up so that you can't be a political donor to take this job, or even a political supporter?
I think I think it would be it's an important step. I would myself favour for certain posts those changes, but I think you've got to have a debate about that.
Mm.
And you do that, but I think the rule change will probably come later. But I think for the appointment, it's got to be seen to be someone who hasn't got any political ties, just to avoid the problems that have been recently. Then you can debate a rule change, which would also affect a range of other bodies and
Right.
in the arts and museums, and things like Channel 4 and so on.
Well, that's I know we've talked about this in the past. I mean, I did a report for Channel 4 just before Christmas talking about the number of honours handed out to friends of the government. There's also controversy about public appointments, a sense that these are handed out to supporters of the government of the day. Is that a concern that you have? And should the rules on a whole host of public appointments and indeed honours be tightened up so that it's not about handing out favours to, or be seen to be handing out favours, or a perception of it at least, favours to political friends and cronies?
There are two different things here. One on public appointments. As I say, I did raise when I was commissioner my worries that particularly under the Johnson government, certain prominent things were coming, not just donors, but chums, allies, people he knew from working in London and the Telegraph and so on. And I was concerned about that. And I think you do need to, that's not got to be carefully monitored. And I was doing that to make sure the processes were properly independent. Whether you, I'm loath to say political donors should be banned because otherwise you're saying donating to political parties is probably a legitimate activity, but you've got to establish that the person concerned is a strong candidate,
Mm.
and not it shouldn't be a reward. Now, it's very hard to define the two. I think banning political donations, you're almost saying the political activity is wrong somehow, and but I think it depends on the post. For certain, for example, constitutional watchdogs like my old role, I would tighten the rules on political activity absolutely.